Hi, guys. Welcome to the Agentify and SME Guru podcast. My name's Sanjay Gidwani, and I'm excited to come to you today with something that some of you have been asking about, and that's my entrepreneurial journey. What has my story been, and how have I come to this place? So I wanted to talk to you about that. I've got a few things that I want to say, and maybe some very interesting things that you may have not known about me. So, born in Sydney, Australia, to immigrant parents from India. My parents came out here, with a very typical migrant story in that they were looking for opportunity and ended up, after a few different jobs, doing the markets. So in Sydney, it's called Paddy's Markets. They did a few different markets, but the one that I remember being taken to was Paddy's Markets. And as a young child, I was taken there, firstly in the bassinet, the next market stall holder would watch over me while my mother ran to the bathroom and all those sorts of things. So I was raised around business. I was raised around a market trading type atmosphere. And I think that's got a lot to do with who I am today. From the age of 4, 5, as early as I can remember, I was a chubby little kid that would talk to anyone and was trying to help my parents sell their wares. Always understanding, I guess, as young children do, that my parents were working very, very hard, and I could see that. It was a 7-day-a-week business. At the time, my dad had a full-time job, so the markets was a weekend gig, and so they were both working 7 days a week. So it was a really fascinating environment to grow up around, and I think I learned some of my early business lessons there, and I think I convinced a few people to buy some stuff as well. So that gives you early confidence in business and in sales. From there, my parents grew their business. They were doing quite well, and they ended up getting into retail stores, so dollar stores, $2 shops, that kind of thing, all throughout Western Sydney. They had a chain of stores, and I would help them manage it. I was forced to go there in school holidays and things like that, and standing at the cash register, refilling shelves, cutting up boxes, doing very, very menial retail inventory type tasks, but learning along the way and giving me confidence. So started with a retail background on the shop floor, as they say. When I was at university, I did take an exchange trip to London, and I studied in London for a little while, and I worked at Harrods, probably my first job outside of a family business. So those of you that don't know Harrods, it's the world's largest department store. And that was a fascinating experience. I loved it. I learned a lot. They had some quite strict rules. I had a little bit of longer hair, and they made me cut the hair and obviously dress up quite fashionably in those days. But I learned a hell of a lot, and that was a very memorable experience for me. Coming back to Sydney, finished a business degree majoring in accounting, and then I started, along with my brother, a party supplies business. Now, that's a party supplies retail business. It's a big box format. It didn't exist in Australia at the time. This is 2005, 2006, and it was thriving in the US. There was a large chain in the US with more than 1,000 stores. And we realized and recognized that this was being done there, and we could do a better job of retailing that in Australia. So we started to grow that business in Australia. And from there, I grew into I'm the first one that has ever done a pop-up Halloween store in Australia. If you Google that, you'll see that we did some great PR around that. And we did that for a number of years, and we did a chain of pop-up Halloween stores. So that was my early experience. I was in my 20s still, and working day and night, betting all I had on Halloween. And for those of you that live in Australia, you will know that Halloween has gone from strength to strength. In 2008, when we did our first pop-up store, people were wondering what the hell. People thought we were nuts. And if you fast forward, we're now 15 years later than that. This is 2023. It's one of the largest retail spend holidays on the calendar. So I was a big part of driving that trend. I was the first one to import pumpkin pails into this country. I was the first one to import fake blood into this country. We, at a time there, I'm very proud to say, we were the largest turning over retailer in Halloween merchandise in the whole country of Australia. We were bigger than all the majors, all the dollar stores, all the party stores, everyone put together. We were the largest in the Halloween category. And so that was some very early success in my entrepreneurial journey. It was tough as hell. I'm not going to lie. The pop-up store business is a difficult business because you still need to get it up to scratch. You still have point of sale systems put in place. You're still hiring and recruiting, shelving, fire safety, uniforms, music and ambiance for the customer. You're doing cleaning of the store. I mean, you're setting up everything as though you were running a full-time store. And 90 or 120 days later, you pull it all down. So you have to do a hell of a lot of work. You have to do a hell of a lot of business in those 3 to 4 months. And if one of the stores is unprofitable, that can affect the whole operation. And that is often the case with the pop-up store business. So as I said, this was starting, 07, 08, 09. So we did well, but I also had full-time brick and mortar retail party stores, and I decided to focus on that instead. And we tried a number of things. We tried online, that was changing. We tried the pop-up scenario I told you about. We tried running, kind of training courses on balloon decorating and cake decorating. But what I realized while I was trying all of this and investing my money, right? You got to remember, every time there's a new idea, every time we open a new store, I'm investing both energy, time, and money of my own. And I realized some of the best investments I've made up to this point were actually the real estate. I had picked up a couple of pieces of real estate. And I was fortunate enough that my family was doing the same thing. My dad had done it. My brother was doing it. So I realized, well, this has been the easiest money I've ever made. This business is going well. I've got some publicity out of it. We'll show you some of that here in the video. But I'm actually making more out of the real estate, and it's quite passive. So a couple of years later, I sold that party supplies business and owned the real estate that it was sitting on, and I became the landlord, and I remained the landlord of that business. And it allowed me to take some time off. I took a year off, and I traveled all over the world. I spent 3 months doing charity work in India. I traveled to Israel. I traveled to Pakistan. I completed my MBA. I had already started it prior to that year off, but I completed my MBA. I went through South America. And then I spent almost 5 years living in the United States. So I lived in 3 places. I lived in Atlanta as a retail consultant. I lived in New York, and I lived in Los Angeles, or Orange County more specifically. And I worked in commercial real estate in Orange County. I worked in consulting in Atlanta and New York, and I did do some non-profit work as well. When COVID hit, I came back to Australia, and something that's very close to me is health food. So I started a health foods business, and it was a US distributorship. So we had picked up a brand that was very successful in the United States, and we were their Australian distributors. And from there, we grew that business to be quite a successful e-commerce business. I sold that business, and the whole time, coming back to my initial point here, I had been investing in real estate. So I bought real estate while I was in the US. I bought real estate during COVID. I bought real estate during my health business. And I turned around when I sold my health business and I said, well, a lot of people are asking me about buying real estate, particularly commercial real estate. A lot of business owners come to me for advice on selling their business and what they might do after and making the right investment. And I decided, well, I'm going to start Agentify, and we're going to teach people how they can foolproof their way through their business journey, into their investment journey, into their retirement journey, because that's what it's about. I mean, to me, the definition of success, and everyone has a different definition, but my definition of success is that if you can live off your investment income, you can passively live off your investment income, well, then you're independently wealthy and successful. And that's, in fact, what I want for every business owner out there. So some of the lessons that I learned in my business journey, I wanted to cover that here with you today. First and foremost, small business is all about building a rocket ship. You often hear this phrase, well, it's not rocket science. Oh, I'm a plumber. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's good. I work hard, but it's not rocket science. I had a client say that to me the other day. And I stopped him and I said, no, it's rocket science. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, what you do to build a good business, which is what he has already done, the amount of detail that goes into who will answer the calls, how will the truck go out, how will they be invoiced, how do we deal with these problems, X, Y, and Z, how clean do we leave the area afterwards, how do we thank the customer once we've left, what do we do if we need an assistant on the job, how are we presented, what are we wearing when we get there, are our vehicles clean when they turn up, are our tools serviced, are the tools clean, how are we appearing, are we well shaven, or do we have standards of appearance, what does our paperwork look like, what does our letterhead look like, where will the account details go and the payment details go on the invoice. What font will it be? What color will it be? What are our branding colors? Where will our logo be on the company vehicle? Will those colors be able to be exactly matched with our uniforms and a cap? What will the staff do when they're in a cold environment? They're in a dark, cold environment. Do they have a nice uniform on, they just put a jumper or a jacket over the top of it, just a plain colored Nike jacket? Or do we carry that branding through and have uniforms for everyone? How do we stand out from other plumbers? There's so much detail that goes into small business. And sometimes small business are the first ones that don't recognize it and don't even value it. And I say, don't undervalue what you do. What you do is like building a rocket ship. Every screw on a rocket ship matters. What are the burners going to be? What sort of motor fuel is going to carry the rocket ship up? At what altitude will it shift and change and drop engines off and, whatever else happens? What's the engineering required? A business is the same. There is the exact same level of detail. So do not underestimate what that involves. It's quite easy to see when you transfer it to a large business. I mean, a large business like a Walmart or a Bunnings, Kmart, they know where each inventory item is on the shelf, picked by location. And those changes are live changing prices that are updated by someone putting tickets on the shelves. So it's quite an interesting level of detail. When you see a ticket, when you see a price label on a retail shelf, there's a number of unique identifiers. There is the barcode, there is the price, there is a short description, but there's also the aisle number, the shelf number, the row number, maybe the expiry date, maybe the batch number. There's a lot of other factors, the date that the ticket's been printed, which means when that item was last replenished, where the location may be picked in the back warehouse could also be on that ticket. So there's a lot of detail that we're not necessarily realizing and seeing day to day, but I can tell you firsthand, every business needs details. Every business has an infinite number of details that it can go into. And in fact, it's those very details that make businesses successful. And that was the case in our business. I mean, when you talk about a party supplies business, we had 30,000 independent SKUs, which means 30,000 different products. And we had inventory systems to manage that. But the customers, it mattered whether the balloons matched the color of the plates, which matched the colors of the paper streamers, which matched the color of the dress-up hat that the child was going to wear. We couldn't just say it was all yellow, because one was sunflower yellow, one was hot yellow, one was a canary yellow, hot pink, magenta, fuchsia, pastel pink. These things really mattered, and we had to categorize these things. And we became a successful business because we paid attention to it. If you're buying fake blood, you say, I just need some fangs, some vampire fangs and some fake blood. Well, it's not that simple. You've got coagulated blood. You've got blood capsules. You've got very runny blood that's great for staining clothing and that sort of effect. And then you've got very thick blood that is better for skin and giving that effect. And then you've got makeup blood, which is what professionals will use depending on the effects that they have. You just want a pair of fangs? Well, there's fangs that look great and they sit here, but they have some adhesive on them. So you actually can't drink from a glass if you're in a party. You end up getting some ulcers because the fangs stick down a little bit over the lower lip. But there's the other ones, the cheap kiddie ones. They're not always kiddie, they're adult as well. But you fold them and you put them in, and you show your fangs off, which is what we do at Halloween parties. Forgive me if some of you have never been to a Halloween party. Now, if you get those, they're great, but you've got to remember to put them in for every photo. But when you're eating and drinking, you take them out and you have a sip. Now, if I give you this information when you come in to buy fangs, when you come in to buy blood, when you're on the website buying fangs and blood, you will never go anywhere else. You understand that we understand what we're talking about. And that's what the property game is about as well. The level of detail that we go into about a property, about the corner that it's located on, about its zoning, about the due diligence, the tenant interviews that we will do to find out whether this is the right sort of tenant for your investment is exactly what we do. And I find that business people understand this better than most. They realize that there's expertise required. There's expert knowledge required here. So let's give it to an expert. So it's something that you should all think about when you're buying property. It's the most important factor when buying commercial property. Do the due diligence and make sure that it is the best investment you can get with the highest returning yield possible. And obviously, the stronger the commercial lease is, the stronger those numbers are, the better investment it'll be for your investment journey.